Before we jump into all the exciting things that you can learn about zoology, we need to know what is zoology. Well, zoology is a study of animals. That means scientists who study zoology, called zoologists, learn all about how animals live, grow, and survive. They study things like what animals eat, where they live, and how they interact with other animals. Animals can live in many different places, like on land, in the ocean, or even in the air. So, anytime you're learning about animals, whether it's dogs, sharks, or even insects, you're learning a little bit about zoology.
To start off, we're going to talk about why zoology is important. First, it's helpful with conservation and biodiversity by identifying endangered species, protecting habitats, preventing the loss of biodiversity, and providing stability for ecosystems. Next, it is helpful for scientific improvements. Studying animal physiology and genetics can help with medical care for humans, medications, and veterinary care. It is also important for environmental health. It monitors the impact the environment has on animals and gives early warning signs for potential ecological issues. Zoology is also important for agriculture and food security, with improvements in livestock health and controlling agricultural pests. Zoology is also important for zoonotic diseases, which examines how diseases are spread from animals to humans and also helps with the prevention of pandemics. Animal behavior and ecology rely on zoology to determine how animals are interacting with the environment and by also protecting the ecosystem and services such as pollination. When talking about animal groups, scientists will use a classification system for all animals, which consists of 7 different topics: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Animals can also be classified into 2 groups, vertebrates and invertebrates. For the vertebrate animal group, we are talking about animals that have a backbone, which are mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. Mammals, also are humans, are warm-blooded, have hair or fur, breathe the air, and feed their young with milk. Birds are also warm-blooded, but they lay eggs and have feathers and wings. Reptiles are cold-blooded. They also breathe the air and have scales or scutes. Amphibians are also cold-blooded, and they start off as water-breathing larvae and then they switch to land-breathing adults. Fish are cold-blooded as well. They have gills and are water-breathing. When we're talking about the invertebrate animal groups, we are talking about animals that do not have a backbone, and they are arthropods, mollusks, cnidarians, echinoderms, and annelids. Arthropods have segmented bodies and jointed legs. Mollusks are soft-bodied and they often have a shell. Cnidarians are water animals and they have stinging cells. Echinoderms are marine animals and have spiny skin. Annelids are also known as segmented worms.
So, let's talk about habitats. A habitat is a natural environment where a plant, animal, or other organism lives. There are many habitats in which all different animals live in, so let's start with the grassland habitat. This is a large open area with few trees, and they have tall grass and wild flowers. Some animals that you might find are elephants, zebras, bison, and lions. And a fun fact is that there are some grassland animals that will move to follow seasons and to find fresh food. Now, for the Arctic and polar habitats, these are areas that are icy and frozen all year round. Animals that live here have to have thick fur, fat, or feathers in order to stay warm. Some animals that you might find in the Arctic or polar habitats include polar bears, penguins, Arctic foxes, seals, and snowy owls. And a fun fact is that the Arctic holds 10% of the world's freshest water. And the next one is deserts. Even though deserts may seem empty, they are full of life. They are sandy or rocky grounds and have very little rain. Some animals that you might find here in the desert are camels, snakes, scorpions, and lizard. And a fun fact about the deserts is that the cacti store their water in their thick stems. Did you know that? Rainforests are warm, wet habitats with heavy rainfall and they provide oxygen to the atmosphere. Some animals you may find include birds, butterflies, bats, small monkeys, and even snakes. And the fun fact here is that the Amazon rainforest is the world's largest rainforest, so be sure to look into that. When we talk about forests, they are full of tall trees, leafy plants, and animals. And some forests are tropical, like rainforests, whereas other forests are more cool in nature. So, some animals you may find in the forest are deer, owls, bears, and insects. And the fun fact here is that forests are home to over 80% of the world's land animals and plants. And lastly, oceans. We all know oceans are salty, deep, and cover more than 70% of Earth's surface. They also provide homes to thousands of species. And as you can guess, some animals here in the ocean include sea turtles, sharks, octopus, and clownfish. And lastly, a fun fact about the ocean is that coral reefs are ocean's habitats that are made by the tiny animals and that they provide food and shelter. So let's talk about animal adaptations. There are three different types of animal adaptations, but first, let's really talk about what is adaptation. Adaptation is when something we are doing is not working and we change our behavior in order to fit with their circumstance, and that's how you adapt to something. Adaptations help animals survive in certain habitats, and humans also adapt to many different situations in life. So we'll start off with the behavioral adaptation. Animals behave in certain ways in order to adapt to their environment, just like humans adapt to their environment and change their behavior whether they are in school compared to being at home or in a professional setting. So, migration is when animals move from one location to another to find their food. And when we want to talk about physical adaptation, some animals use their claws for catching and gripping their prey, while others use them to climb trees or start digging. Some animals even use camouflage to blend in, so if you can think of an animal that's camouflage, make sure you raise your hand and share your idea. But lastly, the third type of adaptation is life cycle. This is the process an animal goes through to help it survive. Life cycles focus on how an organism grows, and the life cycle of a butterfly is a great example of how an organism changes over time. So if you look up the life cycle of a butterfly, you will see that it doesn't always just start as a butterfly. But I'm not going to give all the clues away. I'm going to let you look into that, and you can teach somebody about the life cycle of a butterfly. Without adaptation, no living organism would be able to survive.
Now, let's talk about food chains. A food chain shows how energy moves from one living thing to another. It starts with a producer, like grass, which makes its own food using sunlight. Then, a primary consumer, like a rabbit, eats the plant. Next, a secondary consumer, like a fox, eats the rabbit. Finally, a tertiary consumer, like an eagle, is at the top of the food chain. This shows how all animals depend on each other to survive. Now, let's think about what would happen if all the grass disappeared. How would that change how animals survive, and how would it change the overall food chain?
Next up, we'll talk about endangered animals. Endangered animals are species that are at high risk of extinction, which means they will die out completely. Some of the main causes include habitat loss, which is deforestation of land and land development, pollution, climate change, and overhunting. Today, species are going extinct much faster than natural rates due to human activity. When one species disappears, it can affect many other ecosystems because they are all connected. There are many ways we can help the animals. First, we can protect their habitats. We protect forest, oceans, and waterlands. Secondly, we can reduce pollution by recycling and using less plastic. We can also avoid products made from endangered animals and spread awareness and educate others. Animals are very important to our environment. Here are some ways how they can impact our environment. Animals play a very important role in ecosystems, such as food chains, where they keep populations balanced. Also, seed dispersal by spreading plant life. They also pollination, which helps plants grow, and nutrition cycling, which keeps soil healthy. Some animals are keynote species, meaning they have a huge impact on their environment. If animals disappear, ecosystems can become unstable, other species may decline and also go extinct, and the environment becomes very unbalanced.
If you're looking for an entertaining book to explore more about zoology, please check out The Who, What, Why of Zoology, written by Jules Howard, which talks about the incredible science of the animal kingdom.
Now for your advocacy project, you will build and protect a food chain. Step 1, build the food chain. First, choose a habitat. It can be in the forest, the ocean, desert, or anywhere else you can think of. And from that habitat, pick 3 to 4 organisms. You will need a producer, a primary consumer, and a secondary or tertiary consumer. For our example, we have grass as our producer, we have a grasshopper as a primary consumer, then we have a frog as a secondary consumer and the snake as a tertiary consumer. Next, add a problem. Introduce a real world issue. From the food that we've talked about, you can either do deforestation, pollution, climate change, or overhunting. For our example, we chose pollution, and pollution kills the grass. Now let's see how that affects the rest of the food chain. Your food chain may look different from ours, but here in step 3, show what happens once you introduce the real world issue. What happens to the rest of the food chain? In our example, since pollution kills the grass, with no grass to eat, the grasshopper dies. And with no grasshoppers to eat, the frog dies. And with no frogs to eat, the snake dies. How does this compare to your food chain? Now that you've seen how food chains work, let's think about how we can protect them. Remember, if one part of the food chain is harmed, it can affect everything else. So, what are some things we can do to help protect animals and their habitats? When we protect one part of the food chain, we help protect the whole ecosystem. And a few of the things that you can do to help protect food chains include not littering, make sure you throw your trash away where it's supposed to be, recycle, protect plants and trees, don't harm animals, and keep water clean.
For activity, we will have a word scramble. In this, you will read the definition and unscramble the letters from the box to form the missing term. So here is the first question of your word scramble. What is the name of animals that are at risk of dying out forever?
Question number 2 of the word scramble is a blank is a place where an animal lives.
All right, your next question. The group of animals that have a backbone are called what?